I'll tell you what, she's
managed.
amazing.
Good willpower.
Okay, Violet,
Okay.
I'll be asking you some questions, we'll give you some ideas and what we might want to cover. And thank you for doing this today. Really appreciate it, taking the time to do this. Helping
My
out our
pleasure.
Church committee. Start out with your name. It's Violet Kianos. Where were you born, Violet?
Philadelphia,
You were
Pennsylvania.
Born in Philadelphia. Okay. All right. When did your parents come to the? Were your parents born in the U.S. or were they born in Albania?
No, they came from Albania.
Mhm. When did they come to the U.S. from Albania?
When did they come?
Mhm.
They came in 1925.
1925. And what were your parents' names?
Olga and Gus
Olga and Gus.
Katsakas on my mother's side.
Kasakas. How do you spell that?
Kotsaquis.
Why did they come to Jamestown?
Um, 3 years after they landed in Philadelphia, because my mom was pregnant, and she had to stop there and have me, and then from there they continued into Jamestown. So it was about 3 years later.
Did they have relatives up in this area or friends, or why did they come up to Jamestown from Philly?
My father just decided this is where he wanted to come. He was the first one to come of all of the family.
Was he one of the first Albanians to come, Violet? Was he one of the first Albanians to come here?
Yeah, he came early and eventually opened a restaurant and then went back and got my mother, and that's when our relatives started coming, and they all came to Jamestown.
So they both came to Philly, and then he came up here, and then went back and got your mom from Philly and brought her up? Or did he come here from Albania and
No.
go back?
I didn't say that right. He came with my mom. He went back, and then all the other relatives decided they were going to come with him and settle in Jamestown.
Oh, good. Very good.
And that was 3 years later.
And your dad opened a restaurant?
Yes,
And that was in town here in Jamestown?
basically it was the Brooklyn restaurant.
Oh, beginning of the Brooklyn restaurant. Did he start the Brooklyn restaurant?
Mhm.
He was the one that started that. Wow.
Mhm.
So tell us about your brother and sister.
My brother, Paul Sparrow, wonderful. My sister, Catherine, and that's all the siblings we had. My sister was 2 years younger than I was, and my brother was 3 years younger than I was. And they have both passed away. But I miss them especially my brother.
So you were a very close family.
Very,
You did
very.
everything together. What do you remember? Well, let me back up a little. Where did you live when you first came into Jamestown?
We lived on Allen Street, and it was near the undertaker in that area. Lived in a brick house there. And I remember Dr. Batanza lived next door.
So where did you go to school? You went to grade school where?
Started at Charles Street,
Charles Street.
and from there went to Hall Avenue for a while. There was a school on Whole Avenue between Palmer and Front Street called, yeah, it was a elementary school. And that's where from there, we went back to Charles Street. And then after that, I went to Lincoln.
Lincoln, and then on to Jamestown High School.
And then I went to Jamestown
And
High School.
all three of you did the same thing. All three of you, your brother and sister, went to the same schools.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Good. What's your earliest memory of church? When do you remember first going to church?
Well, we used to go to the Albanian church. My Uncle Steve belonged to it, my mother. So we went there. But I went to St. Luke's Church in the morning with Violet Shaka, and from there I would go to church and sing in the choir where Mrs. Stina Constantine was the choir director.
I've heard of her. Yeah.
Mhm.
Where was that Albanian church?
It was between Steel Street and the top of Sprague, going from Steel. If you're going down from Sprague into Steel, you would find it on the left-hand side. Tiny church.
Okay. Very good. And when did you start? Did your father and mother both go to church there?
Well, my father passed away when I was 4 years old.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
I didn't know that.
He was decorating the restaurant and got pneumonia. Of course, in those days, they didn't have all the medications they have today. So he went to, he was in the hospital for a while and then just passed away.
Shame.
So I left my mom with 3 little children. I was the only oldest, 4 years old, and she couldn't speak English, but she worked hard, and I became the boss of the family, and I'm still bossy.
What did your mom do for a living then?
She was dishwasher, she did whatever she could. She worked on the farms, she worked for Mr. Demas when he had his restaurant on 3rd Street. And then she worked for him when he had the other restaurant on the corner of Main Street and 2nd Street.
Interesting. So
But
okay.
she did good.
So she put in a lot of hours working, so it fell upon you to.
And then she also had a big garden that whole corner
Wow.
on Mount Vernon and Spurk Street was where she had a big garden. Yes, she was busy. And I was busy.
Did you have to work in the garden too? Did all the siblings have to work?
Well, Catherine and Paul were different. They were real smart in school. I wanted to really help my mom.
Sure. Somebody had to, right?
Yep.
So, you went to the Albanian church. Do you remember switching over to the Greek church? What was that scenario there? I mean, at what point did you start going to the Greek church?
When I got married, I thought I was going to get married in the Albanian church, but the other side of my family decided it had to be St. Nicholas, so that's where it all started.
So, we're talking about Jim now, right? I mean, you met Jim.
His family.
His family. They decided that you were going to, so he attended the Greek church. And so, you did what the man's family wanted to do, I take it back then? That's the way it was, right?
I probably would not have listened to my husband, but I did listen to the older folks. I mean,
Where did you meet Jim?
after I finished school, I worked at General Hospital. I ran the switchboard and the reception desk in that little hallway there. and he had come to visit one of his buddies from the Army, and it was after 9. I told him, you cannot go, visiting hours are over. But he went anyway. So then, got a little cozy. One night he came to pick me up. It was around Christmas time, and he had mistletoe all over the top of the ceiling of his car.
Yeah.
So it was the beginning of
Uh-huh.
Violet and Jim.
He knew what he was doing, didn't he?
Hmm?
He knew what he was doing, didn't he?
Made up his mind. Took me a while.
Did you date for a while? How long did you date before you got married?
Well, it was Christmas time, and we got married in May.
Oh, okay.
That's not too long, that's good.
So it was
Yeah.
not overnight.
That's good. So then, did you immediately start attending the Greek church then after you got married there? Or?
Yes, yes. Children went to Sunday school. They walked to Sunday school because Sunday school was early. And then, of course, the kids would come upstairs for communion when everybody else did. And then we would go to church at 11 because church started at 11 then.
And this was the old Greek church behind
The
where
little
the
one.
current one had
The
been.
little one.
What do you remember about that church?
A lot of good memories. A lot of good memories. A lot of people that are gone that did so much work. And Jim and I was president of the Ladies Society, and Jim was president of the church. And we had lamb dinners. Jim and I would put on lamb dinners, I don't know how many times. We worked hard when we were there.
So Jim, was he president of the council then?
Yes.
Yeah, president of the council. So you imagine you had, was it more Albanian families, more Greek families? What was the ratio there?
Well, it was kind of even,
Was it?
in those days. I never really thought of it, and we didn't see the Greek people all the time because they came from different areas. So it was mainly the Albanians and the Greeks in this area.
Did your mother regularly attend church as well there, or she's too busy working all the time to go to church, or?
I asked my mother one time, why don't you go to church? And she said, because I can't afford to buy a hat and a pair of stockings. So, I just, heartbroken, but I couldn't help it.
Was Jim's parents alive then when you got married?
Yes.
Mhm. And they attended the church there?
They went to church.
Now, obviously you had the kids. They were active in Sunday school, you mentioned. And there was a lot of kids that went to Sunday school at that point, I'm sure.
Oh my, yes. The Janithas kids and Papa George's. There were a lot of kids in my children's age group.
Right? Maybe the Constantines. Yeah.
That was nice. That little church had a lot of personality.
Do you remember, who was the priest when you got married?
Father Janithas.
Father Genethus was the priest.
And it was all in Greek, and we didn't even know when we were married.
So no English during your wedding?
No, none at all. None
None.
at all.
Did they, I'm sure back, they did the crowns where you each had a
Oh,
wore the
yes.
wreath and you
Oh, yes.
walked around just like they do now, right? I mean, the
But see,
same-
in those days, nobody bought them. We used what they had in the church. They had their own, and we used those. And then, of course, as time went on, people started buying their own.
Sure. Do you remember moving from the old church to the new church?
That I do not remember at all, because that's when I was away from the church. I had no knowledge of how it started, or, but then after we got rid of the restaurant, then I went back to church and got busy, try to make up for lost time.
Sure. Now, going back to the old church, there was a lot, you did a lot of things together, all the families, right? I mean, your social life was getting, we got together with the people in the church, families. What did you do for like name days? Did you get together on name days, or?
Well, when we had name days, everybody came, and it started out small with just a little something sweet, but then we started serving coffee, and they got, kind of warmed up, and but we did that every year. Same people came, and we really enjoyed it.
Now, you hosted that at your house, right?
Yes,
And you went to other people's house on their name days, so
yes,
you probably kept pretty busy doing that with all the name days.
yes, yes.
That's a pretty cool time, isn't it? When everybody just used to get together and.
Yes, there was a real family together closeness. It was not just the women, it was the husbands too for name day and whatever.
Now, what did Jim do for a living? He was in the restaurant too, right?
Yes,
Did he take over the restaurant from your dad?
no,
Or did
my
that
dad,
come later?
After my father died, my Uncle Steve and Mr. Joka were partners.
That's Athena's dad?
Yes,
They were partners. Of course, yeah, Jim came around much later after Dad passed. Yeah, so Athena's dad, and what was the other gentleman's name?
Steve Katsakis. He was my mother's brother.
Mother's brother. So they had the restaurant.
Mhm.
And where was that in Brooklyn Square, or what was that? Where was
Yes,
That was in Brooklyn Square.
right next to the humidor.
Now,
Where the humidor,
Okay.
all set.
you know when you're ready, Todd.
Got it.
Keep going.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks,
My
man.
cutie.
Feel like a movie star.
You are a movie star.
You are a star. You're on screen right now. So, we had the old church, and you were pretty active there, especially after you were first married and you had the kids and all the families and everything. Do you remember any special celebrations or dances? Were there any dances back then, or was it just mainly getting together on Sunday afternoons or name days?
No, we had dances, I remember, or maybe they were weddings, receptions, people sitting around but we got together. We did.
How about picnics? Do you remember picnics?
Yes, when you got the box lunch. So good.
And that was where? Where did you hold the picnic?
At the Greek picnic grounds.
Yeah. That used to be the spot to go, huh?
Yes, it was. And amazing, because today you have to worry about leaving food out. We left our picnic baskets out all day on a picnic table, and I don't think anybody died.
Right, nobody got sick. Bad mayo.
And dances, I know when I first met Christina, they had the Balkan dance at the Crystal Ballroom. Did they have anything like that back in the old days? I mean,
No,
that was.
No.
Do you remember when that Balkan dance started? Did you ever go to that?
all the time.
Yeah.
No, I don't remember
Was
when
it in
it
the
started.
'60s maybe? 'Cause I remember going in the. Well, I met Christina in the late '70s, and it was going on then, so it must have had some traction from a few years before that. So, but that was a pretty
Wow.
big deal.
Yeah, and they were having them at the Crystal Ballroom even then.
Yeah, a lot of people.
yeah, amazing. Amazing how us, because we were really a small group of people, to really put on something like that was amazing. We've always, we've never had a lot of people that really were, that, because they're not available to work. And the ones we had did wonderful jobs.
We had the, remember the live band? They used to bring in a band.
Absolutely.
Everybody got
Hors
dressed
d'oeuvres,
up. Yeah.
hors d'oeuvres. I remember, what's her name? The Goller girl.
Ethel?
Ethel. One time I'd made little hors d'oeuvres. They were little pies made with phyllo. With the little, real little tiny ones, sauerkraut. Hundreds of them.
Yeah.
So it was amazing.
Of course, you knew how to bake. You baked all that stuff. Did you do the Albanian spinach pie and cheese pie?
Oh yes, that's what I learned.
Mhm.
I didn't have time. I always thought when I left the restaurant business that my mom could show me how to make pie and how to make bread, but that was a bad thing to do because my mom passed away. So I didn't learn. But in the meantime, she had taught my husband.
Ah.
So I thought,
Really?
now I got it made. He was making bread, he's making pies and whatever.
Jim baked all those?
Yes.
Really?
And then he died. So my knowledge came from Helen Bruner
Really?
at that time because she was the leader at that time.
How old were you when your mother passed away?
64. And 65 when Jim died.
I had a ball with your husband when we used to be on the bowling team together. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's what the kids told me,
Oh my goodness.
especially the Cummings kids.
He
They
was
would tell
great.
me all the time.
He was great.
Yeah, he didn't last very long, but you never complained. It was just really okay.
Used to bowl with, Jim and Chris and Pete Wilson, Louie, oh boy, Charlie. What a bunch of characters those guys were. I'll
Yeah,
tell
it
you
was.
what.
They had fun. They enjoyed themselves.
Did Jim play any? Did he play any other sports? I know he bowled, of course. Did he play any sports?
That's it.
In
That's
his
it.
younger days or anything? No, that was it.
No.
Just worked and didn't work at the restaurant.
Yeah, that's busy enough.
You don't have time to do anything else, then, do you?
The Ritz was a bummer for us. It was big and it was really difficult because you have to depend on people that are not dependable when you're in that business.
Tough business. How many years did you have the Ritz?
Well, I went in to relieve one of the girls while she was on vacation for 2 weeks, and I wound up working 50 years.
Oh my gosh. Unbelievable. And
And
that was
then-
on Third Street.
Then at 50, I thought, where am I going to go? Who's going to hire somebody at 50? But I wasn't ready to retire.
Right.
And I had fixed some food for Catherine for George's graduation party, and Mrs. Raisley came in, and she wanted to know who fixed the food, and she said, I do the hiring at WCA. She said, I'd like you to come in and talk to me, which I did, and I wound up being evening supervisor. So my problems were all set.
And I know you were very highly respected there, too. Everybody loved you.
Hmm. They still do. When I go there and get x-rays, my kids come and take care of me, because some of them stayed there
Sure.
and are doing,
They probably respected that you were very,
the best job they ever had.
yeah.
That's what they tell me. My girl can tell you that for sure.
I'm sure you held them all accountable, and they probably respected that you did do that.
Well, because I was fair, you know, and the day people didn't, they resented the kids. But the kids did the same work they did, except they got paid less. So they didn't like it because I was nice to them. But the more she didn't like them, the more I liked them.
Imagine that.
They don't give, sometimes the older people don't give the young people a chance to show what they really can do.
Right. So you had a little break in the church. You were busy working and all that stuff. When did you decide to come back? What made you come back to church?
Oh, because I had gone to church every single Sunday the whole time after I got married with my children. That was not a no question. That was just something that was automatically done every
Right.
Sunday.
Were your boys ever altar boys or any, you know?
The whole time they were
Yeah.
in Sunday school,
Yeah.
both of them.
Must have had a pretty good crew of those guys back then.
Yes, they were. They were there when they were supposed to be. But I think we were a little tougher then too. There was no.
Wasn't an option, was it?
No.
Who's your favorite priest?
Father Janethus.
Seems to be a common answer.
When he came out there, he just looked like for real. And the rest of them, see, I missed out on a couple of them. Because when I came back, right after that, Father Nick was in the process of being hired. So that must be when I came back. I get mixed up with time. I don't get, sometimes you think it's only been a year and it's been about 3 or 4.
That's with all of us.
Well, imagine all the experiences that you've accumulated over all those years and all the people you've met and known, and I mean, it's hard to keep that all straight. It's a long time to keep everything, all in order. You've had a lot of experiences.
A lot of things happened.
What do you think of the church today? Are you encouraged?
I'm amazed. I'm amazed at the wonders that are happening there. The children, they're well behaved. The programs, the way everybody's working so hard. The young people, I'm proud of the young people, how fast they took over what we were getting too old to do. Just like it was automatic. Yeah, very proud of the whole situation.
Well, I think I pretty much exhausted all my questions. Is there anything that I didn't ask that I should have asked?
I don't think so.
Anything else you can think of you'd like to share with us about anything you've done over the years, or in church, or private life?
No.
Violet, you and I won't be here, but what would you like to see for St. Nicholas 40 years from now?
Well, excuse me.
You and I won't be here, okay, 40 years from now. But what would you like to think of St. Nicholas doing 40 years from now?
Well, I hope the young people that they seem to have taught in the right way. We might be lucky and have our church still going. It's all going to be in their hands.
That's what we all pray for.
Yes. And I'm sure that with how they've started and gone about it, I think that they're in good hands. Started young, and they're well behaved, and just hope that the parents keep motivating them
Absolutely.
because they're doing it.
They gotta carry on the tradition, don't they?
Absolutely.
Well, if there's nothing else, Liz, I think that's it. We really appreciate
Okay.
you taking the time to share with us all.
Or was.
So then, Louis Demas got involved at some point later on down the road,
Yeah,
right?
from his father after his father-in-law passed away.
From Mr. Joka.
So it stayed in the family.
So Mr. Joka was his father-in-law.
Yes,
So then he took it over from his father-in-law,
yes.
which later became the Brookwood years later after that.
Yeah, I moved over to the Brookwood.
Yep. So when Jim got out of the Army, what did he do for a living?
He worked at one of the factories, I can't remember, for a short time. But then Chris Pallas, who was a Greek gentleman, was selling his hot dog place. And so he asked my husband if he wanted to buy it, and my husband said yes. And so we had vans. It was Jim's first. And I remember going there, and Chris Pallas was showing them how to make the sauce with a big ladle and whatever. And then he decided to take his cousin Van Verlaney in, so they became partners. And then my husband went to the New York Lunch, which is owned by George Renus, who was another Greek gentleman. So we moved from Jim's Hot Dogs to New York Lunch, and it became Jim's Restaurant.
Where was the New York Lunch?
Right where the Taco Hut is now on 3rd Street.
Oh,
It's a good spot for a break. Put your oxygen back on, Violet.
I'm okay.
Are you,
you
want some
okay?
water?
My water in
You want a sip of water?
No, I'm okay.
You sure?
Yeah. How am I doing?
Doing great. Doing wonderful. Doing really well. A lot of fond memories.
I have got a good memory.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I have. I got spots on my pancreas, and fluid in my lung, blood in my urine, and heart failure. But I'm okay.
Up here's okay.
Yeah.
You're doing really well. Really well. So, you can take a break as long as you like, or if you want to continue.
I thought, Violet, we could take a break for 10 minutes.
Yeah, let's
Oh, okay.
Put your,
take
I
a
will
little
take
break.
a sip of water.
Yeah.
yeah.
There's some in the refrigerator. I don't want to sound stupid.
We don't want you, we won't let you.